the Burdick Ford and Burdick Toyota pregame show.
That it is. Welcome in. Brian Higgins with you. Weren't we just here at this time today? 1 o'clock Saturday. Yeah, we were. Wait a minute. Is this a different 1 o'clock on Saturday? What are we doing? How are we doing here today, people? Feels like the post-game show last night for the Orange Bowl victory out of the Holiday Bowl, rolling up the total offense and all that. Really just ended. Just changed back out of my PJs, and we're ready to roll for Orange basketball here this afternoon as Syracuse gets ready to take on Bucknell, a matchup of two teams a little bit on the struggle bus. The Orange enter today at 5-6. Bucknell enters today at 4-8. Syracuse needing a win today if they want to have any chance of arriving at New Year's Day with anything but a losing record. One more game left in 2024 after today, and that is Wake Forest on New Year's Eve afternoon, Tuesday, 2 o'clock inside the Dome. Need to win them both if they want to avoid having their first losing record on New Year's Day going back more than 60 years. So we'll see if they can pull that off today to at least leave that in play for the next game coming up on Tuesday. As far as Bucknell, it's a series the Orange have dominated all time, but Bucknell back on the rise and struggling earlier this year, but one of the Patriot League's top teams for many, many years. That's been usurped by Colgate over the last decade or so. Bucknell made a little push at it last year, struggling a little bit to start this season, but they figure to certainly be in the mix, if not with, directly behind Colgate during Patriot League play this upcoming season. So that sets the table a little bit. What do we got coming up over the course of the next hour here on ESPN Radio in the Cuse? We're on Cuse Sports Talk. We got you rocking on both the Twitch and the YouTube today. So come by, say hi, and check us out wherever you may be. Get involved in the chat. Get involved in getting ready for today's game, which tips off at 2 o'clock in the Dome. CW for the television today, if you're looking for that. Syracuse graduate Tom Wormy on the call with a rather recent North Carolina big man, John Henson. Did not realize he had gotten into the broadcasting business, so we'll see what he's all about today. He's got to be recently retired from the NBA. And if you'd like, of course, you can listen to the game over on TK99 in our AM signal here in the Cuse, ESPN 1200. If you'd like to join us, chime in, basketball thoughts pregame, transitioning from football last night to basketball today. If anyone's woken back up after the late night last night, you're welcome to join us over the course of the next hour. Phone lines open and available to you, as always, at 315-437-7644. So that sets the table for us here on this Saturday afternoon, getting you ready for Cuse and Bucknell after today. There will be 19 games left in the regular season. All of them will be in ACC play, and that is it. That is guaranteed this year, with no longer every team in the ACC, due to the expansion and size and massive girth of these leagues right now, no longer guaranteed a spot in the ACC tournament. There will be 3 teams in the ACC this year that do not go to Greensboro for the ACC tournament coming up in early March. So that is a thought for another day, the last non-con game of the year today for Syracuse. All right, well, time to take our medicine. Time to take our medicine. We've got to look back. Do we have to look back at the last game? Is this required of the pregame show? This is kind of how we start these things. It was a week ago today. The game was actually, it was over by this point, even though it was only about halftime by this point a week ago today. But Syracuse and Maryland got together at the Barclays Center down in Brooklyn, and the final score was Maryland 87 and Syracuse 60, and honestly, it wasn't even that close. Syracuse lost by 27. It might as well have been 50. It was an absolute butt-kicking pretty much from the word go. Syracuse was down 43-17 at the half, and it didn't even feel that close. Honestly, Syracuse was down 26 at the half in that game, and Maryland, who's a good team, they're good. They're not great. They're good. They really even weren't playing that well. They were playing fine. They weren't shooting that well, and still Syracuse got absolutely run off the court in the first half of that game. And then, to me, We look back at that game, and there's not a point of the game which wasn't disappointing for Syracuse. But if you want to isolate 2 minutes of Syracuse basketball this entire season, I think that tells you what this season has been like so far as we head toward the new year. The first 2 minutes of the second half, Syracuse playing Maryland, Barclays Center, big stage, Brooklyn, NBA Arena. You know the deal. Two major conference teams. They spent a year as conference rivals. Remember that? We don't remember that. You're down 26 at the half. You're not going to win the game. But are you going to show a little bit of You're going to show a little bit of something to start the second half. You're going to show a little bit of pride. You're going to show a little bit of effort. What are you going to show to start the second half to not even let Maryland know, to just let everyone know that you're still here? Syracuse came out to start the second half last Saturday. It was right around now. It would have been right around 1 o'clock last Saturday. Syracuse came out to start the second half, trailing by 26. And immediately, in less than 2 minutes, surrendered a 10-2 run, including multiple wide-open layups, forcing Red Autry to call a timeout less than 2 minutes into the second half. And not that the game wasn't over, but you go from down 26 to down 34. You're getting more than doubled up. You're getting utterly embarrassed down in Brooklyn last Saturday. Not fun. Not fun at all. I look at that 2 minutes. It was the worst 2 minutes of the season. But unfortunately, it was very indicative, I think, of what we've seen this season, of a team that, I get JJ's injured and whatever. The team has just felt listless all year long. It has felt very listless in a way that, while last year's team certainly wasn't perfect, with Judah Mintz and that crew, there was always an energy to last year's team. Sometimes it was a weird, misdirected energy. Last year's team could go in a wide variety of different directions. They were always going somewhere. And, man, they were hard to corral, but they were always up to something. Last Saturday, it just felt like it was like a car whose battery had stalled out by the side of the road. And you're like, what do we got here? Didn't we just replace no? Not fun. Not fun. Let's get a little bit of Red from after the game last Saturday. And Red, as one might guess, last Saturday was not pleased in the effort from his squad.
Nothing to talk about as far as the game. We got our butts kicked, handed to us. So we hung around for a minute, never could get our offense going. They pressured us, they bothered us. But at the end of the day, we got our butts kicked. It was embarrassing, very disappointing. The one thing that we've done all year, even though we've come up short, we've competed. Today, that wasn't the case. As a coach, as you're trying to build and you're going through a rough patch, you want to see fight. You want to see people keep competing and playing. And I thought we did that, but today was the first day that we didn't. I'm very disappointed.
I can't imagine anything as a head coach more frustrating than that. Like, all right, hey, if a guy runs the wrong play, a guy runs the wrong play. Like, it's extremely frustrating as a coach, but, okay, things like that happen. When, like, the first 2 minutes of the second half, when that happens, and after you no-showed the first half, you go to the locker room, come back out, and continue the no-show, I can't imagine how frustrating that is.
We got a lot of games left, but something has to change. And that's what we talked about, and that's, we all got to look deep down inside and figure out what we got to change. Obviously, a lot of it, everything is on me. I'm responsible for it. No question about it, I'm responsible for it. So I got to make some changes. I got to look at some things, look at them differently, but, I told our players, this is a team, so they have to do their part as well.
Yeah, it's, are there clearly things Red and the coaching staff could be doing better right now? Yeah, I'm sure there are. But is a lot of it based on, obviously, the team that they assembled that's not quite good enough? Yeah. But here we are now, and you still would like the group you got to at least give it a competitive effort, give it something out there on the court.
We didn't show up today, and that's on me. We didn't show up today. And I would love to sit here and tell you something else, but I can't. We just didn't show up. A week off, 2 or 3 days off, we've played better than that all year. Even in our losses, we've competed. Today, that wasn't the case.
And I think that is perhaps the most interesting aspect going into this game today. All right, you had that game. Complete no-show. A lot of times, final game before Christmas break, cars like left on outside the dome, getting ready to go. You're playing some Little Sisters of the Poor school, getting ready to blow them out and get out of there, and you have an extremely ragged effort, certainly second halves, and you're looking to get out and go home for Christmas. All right. When you're playing, whoever in games like that in the dome the game before Christmas, you can understand how that mindset comes about. It's still not great, but you can understand how you arrive at that point. This game was against Maryland at the Barclays Center. Like, come on now. You're playing in an NBA arena. That is the goal of literally everybody on the court on both the teams. Like, what's going on? And part of what we saw during the game that Red addressed after is, we've talked about the defense all year long, and the defense has not been good from the word go. The first two games in the Barclays Center were probably the best two defensive efforts of the year, albeit in losses to Texas and Texas Tech. But what we saw in this game against Maryland is there was a lack of effort on the other end of the court, too.
We told our bigs, obviously when they catch the ball, we knew that they would try to double. They came very aggressive. So the first time, you understand it, but then we kept doing it. So that's what I didn't understand. We didn't move, we didn't cut. So it was really, we just kind of stood around. We did stand around, and they just, that was it. We didn't move, we didn't fight to get open. We didn't fight to get open. We talked about that all week. Fight the pressure. You got to fight the pressure. You got to get open. You got to move. They try to take you out of their stuff, and they did.
Yeah, and obviously Syracuse never, save for very, very late in the game. They got it up to 60 points at the end. But, Maryland's foot was so far off the gas in the last 10 minutes. I mean, if Maryland had kept the accelerator down the whole game, oh boy, I mean, you lose that game by 40, 50. I mean, it was trending in a egregious way. Red now, he's still not even a year and a half into his time as head coach, but not high on the list of games he's been a part of.
This is the worst. Just because, I thought we were ready to at least play and compete. To anybody that watched that game, that didn't look like it.
So there's Red from after the game a week ago down at the Barclays Center. No secret on what he was feeling about life at the time. So the team would have done that game. They would have gotten back to the Cuse, dispersed for the holidays. Something that, there have been some changes under Red, some things are the same under Red from Coach Boeheim. What Jim always did over the years is he always got the guys back in town and generally had most years, if not every year, depending on when the next game was, had a practice like on Christmas afternoon or evening. Get the guys back in town, get them back together, get them together late on Christmas, and have a practice. When we had J.J. Starling on a week and a half ago, first of our weekly visits, they will resume this upcoming Thursday in the 315. J.J. Starling every week, presented by RomanoCars.com. That he mentioned that the same thing would be happening this year with Red, and they did the same thing last year. So that is something that is carried through. Don't know what percentage of programs out there do something like that, but Jim Boeheim did that for years and years and years. And, Red's talked about things he's changed. That has been one of the things he kept the same. So the team would have been back in town since Wednesday afternoon. Practice Wednesday, Thursday, yesterday's Friday, game today. So we'll see. Little palate cleanser, get home for Christmas, try to put the Maryland game and all that stuff out of your mind. 3 practices, refocus, ready to go. Bucknell today, a game like you got to win the game clearly, but it's not about that today. I mean, it is about that today, but it's all right. Can you win the game? Can it look good? Can it look right? Can we pass the sniff test? Can we pass the eye test? Can we do all those things here today in a way that is going to be useful to seeing if this team's got a little fight in them going forward? All right, let's hit our first break here in our Burdick pregame coverage here today. If you'd like to chime in, you can. 315-437-7644. And we'll take a listen back to some of Eton Thomas's weekly conversation with Steve and Paulie from Orange Nation the other day. All that as we roll along here on this Saturday, getting you ready for a 2 o'clock tip in the Dome. It's Cuse and Bucknell. It's the final non-conference game of the 2024-2025 Syracuse basketball season. We're back after this on this Saturday on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
Syracuse Basketball.
I mean, what was the Georgetown attendance announced at? 17 and change? So the announced will be at least that. But actual butts in seats, who doggy? It could be grim. Yeah, last night was a lot of fun, KPP Stash. It was a good deal of fun. Actual butts in the seats today. Yeah, it could be grim. Yeah, we've changed out of the PJs, Supercat, even taken a shower. Brushed the teeth. I've brushed my teeth twice since we were last together. Hygienic. It was late, Gavendo. I can't blame you. It was late. We held it down here until just shy of 1. Good crowd, though. We were rocking it on the Twitch. We were rocking it on the YouTube. We were rocking it on the radio last night. We had a good group. Lots of calls. Ooh, Philly's most wanted. That may not be the cure. That's good of you, Tronic. Society appreciates that. Yeah, announced attendance today will be similar to whatever they announced for the Georgetown game, I think, 17 and whatever. That's your season ticket base plus whatever. Minus student tickets, which are not part of this time of year. Actual butts and seats, though, man. What are tickets going for secondary? Let's see. Let's fire up. So I got StubHub on here. Easy. What is the get-in price today? Loading. Still loading. That's the good news, Philly's most wanted. Like, it doesn't take a lot to turn it around. Syracuse Basketball. Yes, Syracuse Orange Basketball. Bucknell, Syracuse. Yeah, give me 2 tickets to the game. $18. In section 305? For reals? Somebody bought section 115s for $23. Well, these are going for more than I would have guessed. All right. Maybe people aren't using StubHub. Let's look on Ticketmaster. Maybe there'll be more people there just because it's a thing to do over the holidays. How fast can I do this? Syracuse Basketball. Yes. All right. Syracuse. Yeah. I'm trying to. Yeah. Find tickets. Come on. Loading. Come on. Load faster. The commercial's almost over. I will tell you the results later.
This is the Burdick Ford and Burdick Toyota pregame show.
That it is back at it here on this Saturday afternoon. We are about 45 minutes out from opening tip today inside the Dome. Cuse and a Bucknell 12th all-time meeting in the series. The Orange have won 10 of the 11. Only loss was against Bucknell back in 05 when Bucknell was really, really good. They won games in the NCAA tournament in back-to-back years, including knocking off Kansas once. We'll tell you about that more extensively in a little bit. But right now, every Monday now, generally at 1 o'clock, unless other events conspire, they wanted only Atan Thomas will be joining Orange Nation for the remainder of the season. So in 2 days from now, when Orange Nation is back on this Monday, you'll be able to hear Atan Thomas talking about this game and getting ready for Wake Forest. This past Monday, what we heard was Atan Thomas and Stephen Pauly reacting to the Maryland loss. And as Steve leads things off, predictably, nobody was in the best mood about what they saw last Saturday at the Barclays Center.
I think the thing that bothered me the most, and I think Pauly too, was just like the effort. They just didn't seem to have it. And Adrian Autry talked about that after the game, that it was really the first time he saw this year. But given how important that game was, Atan, again, another trip to New York City, their last chance at a quality non-conference win, trying to get back on track. How does something like that happen in terms of just what seemed like lack of effort on Saturday?
Lord, how does it happen? I don't know. I mean, it was in the Georgetown game, you could at least say that they were giving the effort.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
The effort was there. It just didn't, they didn't knock down shots. This could have happened, fast break, transition, different things, but it wasn't effort. When the issue is effort, I don't really know what you do as a coach. I was watching the post-game conference, and I felt bad for Coach Red. I mean, he was dejected. He didn't really know what to say. He was like, "Yeah, we're terrible. I'm going to try to hold guys accountable. I'm going to try to come up with some answers. I don't know." It's just I really didn't know what he could have possibly said with what we saw. I mean, Maryland. I'm down here in Maryland, so I've seen them play. They're good, but they're not 30 points better than us good.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're not. It was just one of those games where everything was going wrong, but it was from an effort standpoint. And, there's games where the momentum can shift and another team can have it rolling and they have all the momentum and all the crowds behind them and everything like that. But it didn't really seem like that was it. It just seemed like it was just the effort, the energy just wasn't there. I don't know what you do to try to create that effort. That's just something that the players have to do themselves. I'm not sure. I was kind of at a loss like everybody else was.
We're all adjusting to this no zone thing here in Syracuse. And, I grew up in the 80s, and there was always somebody there if a guard got to the basket and to not even block shots, but there just seemed like there was someone there. What are you seeing on Syracuse's defense where there is Eddie Lampkin's not going to block your shot, but he's not there? What do you see on defense with the rim protection, even from the forwards and the centers?
Well, it's a little bit different. I mean, say when you have Jesse Edwards there and he was down there in the middle, and like you said, somebody got past one of the guards, you knew that he was there as a rim protector. It is a little bit tough when you don't have that level of a rim protector, but then you have to work on a string. So if one person gets beat, then somebody else has to rotate over. And it's interesting because now you're hearing, a lot of the chatter being that they want us to play more zone. You know what I mean? Where before it was like we're playing zone too much. It's basically whatever's working. So winning can definitely cure whatever. If whatever is working and you're winning, then that's what everybody wants to roll with. But yeah, the synergy and the movement as far as like working on a string, that has to be something that you have to be able to get. And sometimes the fact that we do have different lineups, we do have different people, and at different times, and it's not really a lot of, continuity at this point. That could be something that is kind of pointed to the reason why they look a little bit disjointed sometimes. But even with that, you know what I mean? You still got to be able to work on a string and be able to, simple basketball principles that if one man gets beat and somebody has to rotate over and then somebody has to V back to help them. we got to turn it around. That's the bottom line. We have to turn it around.
Tana, why don't you get your thoughts on Kyle Cuff? Because, we talked about that the team, by and large, didn't show much effort or much fight on Saturday. And Paulie and I were kind of saying that really one of the guys who did, I thought Elijah Moore did some good things as well. But I thought Kyle Cuff came off the bench. He provided some energy, 10 points in 17 minutes. We've seen him get on the floor a little bit for loose balls. And at least it seems like he's trying. Do you think he will work his way into more minutes as things move along, or do you think Saturday was a case of nobody else was doing anything and at least he was providing energy, so Red left him out there?
He earned his minutes. He played well. He played hard and knocked down a 3 or 2, and he earned his minutes. I don't know what's going to happen moving forward, but he definitely did earn his minutes on Saturday. I think that one of the things that when you mentioned Elijah Moore, and he knocked down a few open shots and he scored, but it can't be just the scoring.
Right. Yeah.
That is it's more of like it's more of an effort. Like if you're not knocking down shots, if the threes are not falling, if the jumpers are not falling, then you have to do something else. Then you have to be able to, be a terror on defense. You got to be able to, fast break. You got to be able to move the ball. Like we have too much athleticism out there for us not to be fast breaking at a higher pace. It was interesting. I was just having a conversation with my son about, the good old days, and we're talking about the running Rebels. And, I'm showing him clips of things like that and how they used to just get after it on defense. And then they used to just throw the ball up, and they're running teams off the floor. If they weren't worried about 3-point shots not falling and then just being completely dejected if they're not falling. You know what I mean? You have to do something else. And I feel like our team, we don't have to live or die by the outside shot. And if that's not working, then we have nothing. And we have capable guys that can do a lot of other things, and we just have to be able to pull that out of them. So I think the mentality has to kind of switch, because what we saw Saturday, it can't happen. I'm not taking anything away from Maryland, but honestly, I didn't even think that they were playing that well. I've seen them play better than they played Saturday. Like if they would have played at their top, we got beat by 50. You know what I mean? So it's not going to get any easier from here, but it can't be solely on if we're making shots or not. There has to be other factors that are in the play.
Yeah, Syracuse shot 50% from 3, 8 for 16, and still lost by 27 points. I actually saw your tweet earlier today about UNLV, and to this day, for me, that was the most dominant team of my lifetime. Was watching those back-to-back Final Four teams, and beating Duke by 30, and that team was very, very impressive. I do want to ask you about JJ, because we've been saying that let's see what it looks like when he comes back, right? And we don't know exactly when he's coming back yet, but anytime you take a 20-point per game scorer off the floor, it is going to look a little bit disjointed for a little bit. I guess my question to you, Atan, is how much of a difference do you think he makes moving forward, and do you think it will look a lot better? Because it's going to have to look a lot better, right? Will it look a lot better when he comes back?
Well, I don't want to put it all on his shoulders. You know what I mean?
Sure,
that's kind of a lot. He's the top scorer for the team. What he means to the team is invaluable, and what he can do in creating his own shot and knocking down. Yes, he can do all of that, but it can't be all on him. There's a lot of other improvements that we need to make. That when he does come back, those improvements have to come along with it. And a lot of those improvements are our defense. We have to be able to get some, fast break points. We have to be able to, rotate on the string. And, if somebody gets everything that everybody else is seeing, we have to improve in those areas, because if those areas don't improve, it's not going to matter when he comes back. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we have, but I think that we can do it. I don't think that all is lost. I know that a lot of, the fan attendance is down, and people are projecting where it's going to be moving forward. I don't think we have to necessarily, give up on the entire season. I think they still have time to turn it around, but they're going to have to turn it around quickly.
What do you make of a player like Chris Bell? Can you make sense of how do you go from what he's made 8 threes in 2 games in his career, and now he can't hit anything?
I think that Chris Bell, and I am a fan of his. I've been watching him last year, and I like how he plays. I think number one, he's in a rough spot right now, very rough spot. The biggest slump, probably of his career that he can even recollect. I think one thing that these young cats need to do, and I will always say this, is that they need to get out of their head. They need to ignore all of social media, ignore anything that is negativity, whether it's the fans and everything like that that's coming on. Don't even look at it right now. You know it's going to be bad. So don't even look at it right now. Don't listen to the podcast. Don't listen to anybody talking about it. Just block it all the way out and get back to playing the way that you play. Don't rely on, if you're not making shots, that you're completely out of the game. He's too athletic and too talented to do that. There are plenty of ways that he can contribute to the team if his outside shot is not falling. And he needs to be able to get into that. Then everything else will kind of pick itself up. But now pick it up on defense. Start being a leader. Start talking out there. Start getting the guys together. Start driving hard. Start getting out on fast breaks. Doing all those things. And then the threes will be a little bit easier then. Because you won't feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulder. And if you miss this three, then the world is going to end. And that's the level of pressure that I see him playing with now. And where, a year or two before, he played free. At least that's the way it looked.
Etan Thomas joining Orange Nation this past Monday. I'll be joining them every Monday, 1 o'clock throughout the remainder of the season. And, man, that's certainly something that we're going to be watching today and going forward. There's a lot going on with this team right now. Obviously, from the transfer portal not necessarily working out as one would have hoped or remotely close to it, to J.J. Starling being out. But Chris Bell, the last guy they talked about there, Chris Bell shot 42% from three last season. 42% from three. This year he's 11 of 48. That's barely above 20%. Chris Bell, in the last 4 games from three, is 0 for 10. He only shot 1 against Maryland. 0 for 1 against Maryland. 0 for 3 each. Georgetown, Albany, at Notre Dame. He was 2 for 6 at Tennessee. That's the last time Chris has made a three-pointer. He's not had any game all season where he's actually gone off from three. Hit 3 versus Texas Tech. That's a season high. You go through the games. Lemoyne 2 of 6, Colgate 1 of 4, Youngstown State 1 of 8, Texas 2 of 6, Texas Tech 3 of 8. At least in most of those games, the shots are going up. Cornell did not attempt a 3. Tennessee 2 of 6. Last 4 games. 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 1. They need him. They need him making threes. They need him shooting threes. And I get we spent all off season being like, all right, can he add some rebounding? Can he add a dribble drive? Can he add this? Can he add that? And that's all great and that's all important. But more than anything right now, Syracuse needs him to do the thing he was actually good at last year. He's got to be doing something. Get the ball in the basket. In the basket. At least get the ball toward the basket. Because now he's not even shooting at all. Maryland. Last Saturday, played 17 minutes, attempted 4 shots, 1 3-pointer. And with the lack of high-grade weaponry on this Syracuse roster this season, that ain't going to cut it. Now, his shots may not go in. He may just have a terrible season shooting the ball. I don't know. But shoot it, he needs to for Syracuse to have any chance, especially with J.J. out. Especially with J.J. out. J.J. Starling out again today. We'll tell you about injuries when we come back as well. With that, we'll step aside. If you'd like to chime in here on our pregame programming presented by Burdick, you may. 315-437-7644. Back after this, Cuse and Bucknell, half hour out in the Dome on this final Saturday of 2024. We're back after this here on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
The Sports.
Oh, you got the closing line, CBW? Yeah, that was important to some. Cuse is minus 12. Hard to feel confident in taking Cuse minus anything at this point, though Bucknell is also not good. Yes, Joel Klatt, as unsubtly as possible, brought up the possibility of middling the spread last night. Last night's game had to have one of the larger middles possible. I mean, the game if you got Syracuse right when the game opened, you could have gotten them at like 3, 4.5. Then it got up as high as what, like 18.5? It's a meaty middle. Yeah, Bucknell's not good. At least they're not playing well. They were supposed to be decent, but was it his last 3 against Tennessee, Steve? Thank you. So 13 straight. He been 11 for 35, which still isn't good by his standards. So he was 11 of 35. That's 31%. Like, it's not good, but it's at least not comically atrocious. Now he's 11 of 47, or we say? 11 of 48? 11 divided by 48. 23%. He's 20 percentage points lower than he was last year. 20. I wish that Gus had called the last Washington State touchdown last night, like as Gus, like would call big moments. Lets it fly for the cover. Ha ha! Washington State has covered in Vegas. Gus needs the big moment. Gus Johnson's not a subtle an announcer filled with great subtleties. We're innovating, CBW. We're coming up with innovations. What's going on the YouTube? Anyone hanging out on the YouTube today? YouTube was popping last night. Woo! Gets reckless in there after football games. I don't think it was that long ago, CBW. I mean, it wasn't recently. I don't think it was that long ago. I have no idea the last time Gus would have been here to do a game. Maybe back when he was at CBS, he had the regional here or something in 10 or 05. I don't remember him doing a Syracuse game in the Dome of any sort. Yeah, 2021. It was actually kind of recently, that one. Like the Utica one closed a while ago. Yeah, Gus did that. He Sorrentined us from the parking lot. I like Grimaldi's. Grimaldi's was great, but it's definitely not there anymore. All right, back at it. Getting ready for Cuse and Bucknell. Brian Higgins with Saturday afternoon here. We're less than 30 out from opening tip in the Dome. Final weekend of the year. Final game of the year will be on Tuesday. Do believe. Now, this is why you always do. This is why you tune in to all the shows and all the places. Last night, we were hanging out for a good long while. Cuse Sports Talk exclusively brought to you by our friends at Labatt Blue and Lipton Hard Iced Tea. That we slung some, like you had to be there. Like we just, off the cuff, started doling out tickets to the Wake Forest game last night. And if you weren't there, it's just tough noogies. I think we got a pair left, so do tune in to Orange Nation on Monday if you're looking forward to checking out a little Hoopsy Hoops in person here with only 2 chances left this year anyway, today and Tuesday. Not this season. You know how basketball seasons work. It's just the year ends on Tuesday. Yeah, you all understand how calendars work, which means that you will understand this day in SU basketball history. Brought to you by the Shep Family Funeral Home. Celebrate your loved one with help from Shep. Visit shepfamily.com. So I mentioned the all-time series. Syracuse leads that 10-1. Most recent meeting was absolute blowout. This came back on November the 23rd of 2019. Syracuse won that game 97-46 behind Buddy Boeheim and Elijah Hughes, both surpassing 20 points. Buddy had 22. Elijah had 21 in that game as the Orange won in a runaway back now 5 years ago. Bucknell's won once in the series, as mentioned. That came on November 22nd of 2005, a 74-69 Bucknell win in the Dome. That was sandwiched right in the middle of Bucknell's best stretch in program history. At that point, I think it was the third game of the season. It was the second game for Syracuse of the season anyway, back in 05, which shows you how much later season started. As recently as 20 years ago, the game 2 was happening on November 22nd. But Bucknell was coming off a win as a 14 seed in the tournament over Kansas the year prior. Well, earlier that year, that March. In 2005, they had beaten Kansas by 1 in the first round of the tournament and then lost a close game, I believe it was to Wisconsin in the second round. Then Wisconsin, actually, go figure, they were playing in the portion of the tournament that funneled into the Dome for the East Regional. So Bucknell nearly played tournament games in the Dome if they'd pulled out that second round game. And then Bucknell, later that year, all right, they beat Syracuse. They kept rolling. Out of the Patriot League, they got a 9 seed. That is damn near impossible to do out of the Patriot League, to get a 9 seed in the tournament. And then they played Arkansas in the first round, and they won. Before losing to a really, really good John Calipari Memphis team in the round after that. It was actually the year before Derrick Rose. They had Joey Dorsey and all these guys. They kind of had the core of the Derrick Rose team, just Derrick wasn't there yet. But, man, Bucknell, the time Syracuse lost to him, Bucknell was riding along essentially at the height of being one of the best Patriot League teams of all time. So that went down. That would have been almost 20 years ago, 19 and change at this point. Syracuse's only loss in this series. A little bit different, at the time back then, 05, that game would have been in 05. So that's Jerry's senior year, which obviously ended in the crazy run in the Big East tournament for Syracuse. So we're going back. That was a really good Syracuse team led by Jerry and a freshman Eric Devendorf et al. And a really good Bucknell team that kept its core together for a few years and won tournament games out of the Patriot League in multiple seasons, something we've watched Colgate attempt to do here over the last half decade or so, and they've yet to be able to pick off their first. So that tells you how good those Bucknell teams work back then. Thinking of the tournament back then, the news that broke last night that we mentioned briefly on our football pregame show certainly applies even more, I think, today in a basketball pregame show. Rest in peace to Greg Gumbel, passed away yesterday at the age of 78, I believe he was, from a battle with cancer that dates back, at least to our knowledge, to the spring. We all first became aware that something likely was wrong with him when he had to pull out of his normal March Madness hosting duties for CBS, of which he has done years and years and years from the studio. So rest in peace to Greg Gumbel, passing away yesterday at the age of 78. He certainly was a voice in the sporting world, be it in college hoops or the NFL or studio work on CBS, NBC before that. Greg was all over the place for decades upon decades, both doing studio work, play-by-play, 8 million things called a Super Bowl. He all over the place was Greg Gumbel, and he will certainly be missed. A steady hand at the job he had for a very, very long time. So while he was not part of the tournament last year, his final tournament would have ended up being 2023. Obviously, Ernie Johnson does a lot of that stuff now, and he is certainly more than capable of filling that role. But Greg will be sorely missed doing all of the great stuff he did. Gone far too soon from cancer at the age of 78. All right. Get you ready for the game today. How many sad stories can we pack in all at once? Shall we just toss in another one here? Mike Waters had a nice article yesterday. I saw it yesterday on this. Was it Mike? Was it Donna? One of them one of our local Hall of Fame writers about Syracuse basketball, had a nice article about this yesterday about a tie between Syracuse and Bucknell. Donnie Freeman's, he was his high school coach when he was a freshman at St. John's College in D.C., St. John's College High. Why people call things college highs, I don't know. That's neither here nor there. His head coach was Pat Behan, who now, unfortunately, is suffering from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So obviously he had to step down from that role. Then Donnie transferred around, ended up at IMG down in Florida. They come back together today because Behan is he's being called a special assistant helping out the Bucknell staff. So that'll be a neat little thing that Donnie and Behan get to share the court in the Dome together today. I'm not sure if Behan is here or not. I guess we'll have to keep an eye out for that. But a cool little story of the tie between Bucknell and Donnie Freeman here today. We'll see what kind of game Donnie has. Can he have a big one today for the Orange? We got a big matchup in the post between Eddie Lampkin and Noah Williamson, two big dudes inside. We'll detail that, get our final thoughts for the game, all when we come back to wrap up our preview and our pregame show here, brought to you by our friends at Burdick Next here on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
This
Yeah, it feels kind of like an Eddie Lampkin game today. God, I hope so, Gavino. Hopefully that will be available to us. I'd say hopefully both, CBW. Hopefully that settles in as your guard rotation. Bell's minutes are already suffering. He only played 17 minutes last game. The CW, LA Orange. The CW. Hey, Kev. Yeah, that is a fact, Gavendo. Matt is they're on their way back from San Diego. Tim will be on the radio with Coach Sadlin today. Assuming Paulie remembered to plug everything in. That Paulie. Heck of a game last night, Kev. That was a lot of fun. That was a really fun game last night. That was everything the Holiday Bowl has been over the years. That was just good, clean fun. McCord slinging it all over the lot. That was an enjoyable watch. It's far too long, but that was an enjoyable watch. That is the question, Ryan. Fran kind of, they had signed up Valari to wear the eggnog, but Fran kind of turned it around and shot it out into the crowd of players behind him. A backup offensive lineman I'd never heard of before seemed to take the brunt of it. Yeah, Syracuse defense was reasonable trash last night, but the Orange secondary was also lacking many. God bless you, Kyle McCord's chips. The chips. Yeah, I'm struggling with this pregame. Mike W. wants Fran to coach this game? Yeah. I still want to know, like, I believe that Fran Brown is allergic to eggs. I believe it. I'm just curious, like, what level of egg allergy would one have to have an allergic reaction to not consuming, but just having eggnog land on you? I have no idea. Fran didn't actually seem sure either. He just didn't want to risk it. Which I get, but we need some allergists. Being allergic to eggs has to be annoying. I guess he can use being allergic to eggs. Can he use that to get out of the mayo bowl too? Man. Can this game be streamed on the CW? I feel it's always a pain in the ass to stream the CW. All right, back at it here on this Saturday. We are a little 10 minutes and change out from the ball game here today. Cuse and Bucknell. 12th all-time meeting. The Orange of 110 of the first 11. Let's get a little Harding and Mazzotti injury report into our lives here today. For the Orange, it remains as it was. J.J. Starling is still out. We've not received any definite time schedule upon his return. I'm sure he'll be thrilled when we ask him about it again this upcoming week. I think in the back of our brains, we're all kind of thinking mid-January is generally where something like this with a broken left hand would land. But until you get the X-rays and all that stuff done, it's it's kind of hard to say how that will all come together for JJ. I'm sure he has many trips to the doctors for them to check that out, but there's not really any rehab or anything you can do for any of that when you're coming back from a broken hand. So we'll just play the waiting game with J.J. Starling on today's Harding and Mazzotti injury report. It'll very likely be the same Harding and Mazzotti injury report that we present to you during the pregame show before Wake Forest on Tuesday, before the pregame show before Florida State next Saturday. We'll find out when we get some new news on that. As far as we're aware of today, nothing else pressing on the injury report. We've talked lots about Eddie Lampkin's back, but that has looked better over recent days. Hopefully nothing went awry over the Christmas holiday for Lampkin. Keys to the game today, Lampkin will be one of them. We got a big boy battle inside. Lampkin for the Orange. Noah Williamson's a legit 7-footer for Bucknell on the other side, so that's going to be a nifty little rumble inside, which realistically is probably better for Lampkin, going against those smaller, quick dudes that'll step out and, better fight for Lampkin inside. We've mentioned Chris Bell, who's missed his last 13 three-pointers, has not made one in 4 games, and missed his last 3 against Tennessee right about a month ago now. Can Chris Bell make a three-pointer? A shocking question to have to be asking, but one that we are certainly asking here today. Choppa Moore, I think he's starting to... I guess he technically didn't start last game. Man, you forget about that as the Orange bungled the starting lineup situation. Can Choppa, we're waiting. Chris Bell's not making threes. JJ's not there. Can Choppa come out the chute with a good game today? I think that's going to be something intriguing to watch. Can Donnie Freeman? Donnie Freeman should be able to out-talent and out-athlete these guys. He's done that in some games this year. Can Donnie Freeman muscle up and get inside? Can we see another 2010 type game from Donnie today? I think that's definitely in play for what we're going to get in the ball game today. I got Syracuse winning this game. What's the number I came up with? 82-69. 82-69. Cuse, what did the spread end up? I did this before the spread was out. The spread's 12. Wow. I should go to work in Vegas, something like that. Not actually betting, but, predicting spreads. Can you make money just for predicting the spreads ahead of time? So, good on Vegas. That's about how I have it. That said, Syracuse has had exceedingly hard times putting anybody away this season in the 5 games that they've won. Bucknell's on a 6-game losing streak of their own right. They're 4-8. The Orange are 5-6. It feels like this is Syracuse's last legitimate chance at a get-right game this year. After today, you got 19 games left. They're all ACC games. They're all ACC games. You're in the fight of your life the rest of the season. You got to go get today to just steady the ship a little bit before you're back in ACC play for the rest of this season. All right. What do we have as far as coverage here today? On the radio, of course, TK99 and ESPN 1200. Tim Leonard filling in for Matt Park today. He was on his way back from San Diego in the Holiday Bowl. So do check that out. If you're looking to watch the game, the CW is your place to be. I'm told there's still about 6 minutes left in the Louisville game that's on before that. I don't know what they do if their game runs long. Tip might be pushed a little bit. It's not exactly like ESPN where they can be like, here's another channel. Here's our streaming service. The CW can be a bit of a mess when it comes to stuff like that. So fingers crossed for us all that nothing goes awry with our ability to watch the beginning of the game coming up in less than 10 minutes. And then after the game here today, those of you looking for post-game, we will be here. Crunch are facing off at 3 o'clock today, second straight day up in Laval, north of the border, against the Rocket. They won yesterday. That game will be on the radio. We will be doing a Cuse Sports Talk exclusive postgame presentation today. We'll still have Red Autry's full postgame press conference. We'll still be taking your calls at 315-437-7644. Cuse Sports Talk on Twitch, on YouTube, immediately after the game today. We'll hang out for an hour. We'll take your calls. We'll go back and forth in the chat, and we'll hear from Red after the game today. So there's our plan for the remainder of this Saturday. With that, we'll let you disperse to take in the game today. We'll rejoin here in a little bit more than 2 hours to see how it goes today for Syracuse and Bucknell. Thanks for joining us here on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
From opening night to